you discuss hyperobjects, and hyperobjects are these constructs which are so complicated that they're actually truly unknowable because there's too many factors for us to actually sort out. And the ultimate of the hyperobjects is a human being, because particularly we're part material and reductionist, and we can talk about our different cells, but even those cells are made of atoms, which we can't fully even grasp with our own quantum mechanics. And so we're also this other thing, this felt sense of this other thing, the capital M mystery thing. And so we end up with the hyperobject of a human being as a very fundamentally challenging thing to grapple with at the very base level. So it seems that we have to, as you were somewhat suggesting, bring in this healthy respect for awe, for rapture, for the mystery, for a lot of what Jamie Wheel has been talking about, like finding that the divine within, the entheogen, the etymology of that, awakening that sense, that knowing of what we have, and then combining that with science to figure out what we're doing our best. But it seems like the thing that's the check and balance, the bounds, the checks on whatever we're doing, it has to reduce to something else, like Eisenstein's sense of inner being, this feeling that we are all interconnected, or the highest ideal of truth and love, right? Like these things that perhaps have to be the ultimate, or maybe are the only checks and balances. So when somebody is doing something that is out of accord with the fundamental principle of inner being, which is the belief that everybody is you living a different life, the earth is actually not separate from you, but a part of you. And we can actually look at that by everything that we consume from the earth becomes us. We can look at it atomically. We can look at it in a variety of different ways. We have to bring that understanding and blend it in a very kind of sensible way with what we can know from science. But that's not, as you said, it's not happening. It's being siloed. There's people who are exploring these other kind of spiritual aspects of things. And then there's the scientists that are sorting these things out and asserting that they have, full knowledge of everything in there. And then there's the middle actors, the politicians who are, claiming that they know everything about COVID, for example, and maybe they even feel justified about claiming that the dangers of these certain things because they don't really know. And if they say they don't know, they're worried about what people do. So they have this kind of Thanos justification of, well, we better say it's as bad as we can possibly say because we need people to act in this certain way because that will actually save lives, rather than being bound by truth, by love, by this sense of mystery of the unknowing, and really trusting that those principles will actually somehow, some miraculous way, those principles will hold. But without those checks and balances, it seems like there are no checks and balances.
So I'll translate what you're saying to another way of speaking about it, is asking, are there different methods of knowing that are relevant for different types of contexts? Science is a method of knowing things, right? It's a methodology. So epistemology means, how do we know what we know? What is our process of coming to understanding or belief or knowing? And so science is really an epistemic process of how do we do observation, do measurements, do testing and prediction, and et cetera. Science per se pertains to the domain of things that we can measure first, which means third person objective things, and where we can repeat the measurements. Are there some things that are real where I might get a measure, but I can't repeat it? Sure. Are there some things that are real that I can't even measure, either because they're outside of the scope of current measurability or because they're not measurable in kind, like a first person experience? Oh, well, I can measure a first person experience by measuring brain states. No, measuring a brain state as a neural correlate of a first person experience is not the nature of the first person experience. This is no matter how much I know about the genetics and evolutionary history and chemistry of a strawberry, if I've never tasted it, I still don't know what a fucking strawberry tastes like. The taste of a strawberry.
Yeah, a 5-MeO can create a 1 hertz, delta brainwave state, but it doesn't mean that you have any idea what it's like to be in the experience of a 5-MeO journey, right? Like
you can't reduce it. Neuroscientists studying the brainwaves of people on 5-MeO or 40 years Zen meditators and saying, okay, I know more about their brain states than they do. It's true. Do you know how to navigate into those experiences or even have a sense of what they're like? Not at all. So what that means is, but are they real? Yes, they're real, but they're not objective. So subjective is not fake and objective is real. Objective is a subset of the real. Subjective is a subset of the real. Now we get in trouble when we take a subjective experience and try to make an objective proposition about it. Right? So I have an experience, whatever it is. The experience is an angel spoke to me or something about. Now, if I make an objective proposition, angels are definitely ontologically real. They live in this thing called the astral plane, they whatever it is. I'm making a jump from a domain of experience to a domain of statement about objective reality without doing the appropriate check to see, does that hold? If that was true, what beyond my experience would also be true that can be appropriate validation? So what I can say is, it is real that I had an experience of this type and that it was meaningful for me in these ways, right? And so this is where it's like there are different domains. Mathematics doesn't involve measurement. It involves just pure principles of order. So math isn't science. That's a whole other domain of epistemology of just pure principles of order and relationality, right? So there's a reason I'm bringing this up. Everyone does rationality, but they don't all do it well. You have to train it, right? The early Greek thing of saying, well, if I at arm's length close one eye and hold my thumb up like this to the moon, my thumb obscures the moon, therefore the moon is smaller than my thumb. That's a rational argument that's wrong because it's not factoring the change in visual perception of size based on depth perception, right? Farness away. And so we can do rational constructions that are wrong. So basically, critical thinking in science is the study of how to do rationality well. And we have whole university programs on how to do rationality well because almost everyone is rational wrongly most of the time, right? And there's a similar thing for intuition. Most people do intuition wrongly, and there is a process to refine it, but we don't actually have good school processes for how to do that as much. So most people will say they'll have an experience and then they'll make a claim about objective reality. That's a problem, right? And their desire for certainty is still getting booted. In that moment, they might have been in a trans-egoic state, but then their ego tries to capture it and say, no, I can say this for sure about the nature of God or what happens after we die or whatever. Probably not. Like, you don't actually have the base for that. You're moving from something that was an experience beyond belief to trying to make a belief about it. Don't do that. Yeah. That's not the thing to do. That's what the knowledge that is knowable is not the eternal knowledge is referencing, that there is a domain that isn't about believing, right? It's about a nature of an experience that creates a sense of devotion that will affect the nature of how I act, including the nature of how much I want to pay attention and study so that I can act better. But when I convert it into belief, I have to be careful. Did I do that properly or did I go sloppy?
I can give an example of how this happens. And this where you have this kind of spiritual epistemic hubris, right? And I've seen it in ayahuasca ceremonies. Somebody has, and ayahuasca gives you unbelievable access to what feels like gnosis with the GS, the felt sense of things, but it will also give you images. And then these images will then play out a story. And I've had, you always have a sharing circle. And you'll have people who will share something, and they'll share something. And often this happened recently, sharing something about me. Oh, I appeared to them as this bunny, and this bunny said this thing. And they were certain that I was actually the bunny actually saying this thing. Whereas with the humility, it would have been like, there was this thing, like a dream, for example, like it's not imagining that this dream was a real dream, but what does this say about potentially about something that is actually real, but potentially about me? Maybe this was about me needing to see you as a bunny. So I felt more comfortable with my own relational nature to you. And so there's so much that you have to look at, that you have to approach these things as the mystery. And I think this is the problem when anybody gets into channeled text or this kind of idea of reading someone psychically, or you can even on the spiritual side, let alone on the materialistic scientific side, you can arrive at certainty from your own subjective experience, which is also, challenging. And I talked about that with Eric Davis as well. Like, you also have to just have great respect for even the most transcendent truth that you arrive at. Just this kind of humility of like, maybe, and this was interesting. And let's sit with this. Let's feel it until it feels, and see how it feels and see what it reveals over time.
Yeah. If like this actually interesting that the essence of the scientific impulse, the highest essence of the scientific impulse is a reverence for reality. There's actually a kind of felt reverence where it's like, I want to come to study and know what is, including if it's different than what I think. I'm totally happy to have the experiment prove me wrong, because I respect what is more than I respect my own wrong ideas about it. And there's a depth of curiosity and desire to know, an epistemic drive that arises out of a certain like respect and reverence for reality. It's fucking beautiful. Is that held all the time? Because I can also have an unhealthy spirit of science, which is I want to be maximally certain of all the things I possibly can so that my emotionally negative relationship with uncertainty can be crowded out. So I want to just have all the facts that I can and feel like I have good answers for everything so that I feel secure. Those are very different spirits, very different like come froms of the thing. And so if I have a respect and a reverence for reality, and I study history a little bit, and I look at how many things the best thinkers in the world historically got wrong, got right, but then also wrong or partial, and then couldn't have possibly figured how it was going to be advanced beyond them. There's a humility I'm bound to not just be ridiculous, right? Like I would be ridiculous otherwise. And then I also get that everyone else that is perceiving reality, there is some signal in what they're perceiving. There's some reality. So my respect for reality also means my interest in the way other people see it. Now, this becomes the basis of politics. When you were talking about politics earlier, polis, of the people, right? Do we have to do politics? Yes, we have to say, how do these Homo sapiens that don't have stone tools, that have the ability to split atoms and create nuclear weapons, that have the ability to create artificial intelligence, have the ability to go into space, how do these ape creatures with the power of gods coordinate with each other in a way that doesn't just do the ape creature thing with that much power? Because if I have the power of gods and I don't have some kind of commensurate wisdom and virtue guiding it, then we self-destruct. Mm-hmm. And so what is the wisdom and virtue that is adequate to guide the amount of power that our tech has given us is like a defining question. And so one of the key insights is that in all the wars, let's say that it's a physical war, if I don't kill the other side completely, right? We win a battle. They're still in the world. They don't go away. They learn whatever weapon that we used or whatever military strategy. They make their own innovations and then they come back. And that's the escalation of war, right? That's an arms race of some kind. But the same is true in a political war. We work real hard to beat them. So for 4 years, our guy gets in. And we made an innovation of how to get more people out to vote or how to do a more compelling piece of media that scared people and shamed them into voting, whatever the fuck it was. We figured out how to use a better AI system to make customized versions of our message for demographics that aren't voting. Well, the other side that loses don't stop existing as people and they don't agree with you. They actually feel more disenfranchised, more upset against you. They reverse engineer that innovation, add innovations, and come back, and the whole field of warfare just escalates. Mm-hmm. Same in culture wars, or any view of left, right, whatever kind of thing. So, and with the Industrial Revolution, this very long exponential curve of us developing the power of gods through tech, right? Through abstraction, tech and coordination that other animals didn't have, that makes us not an apex predator, because apex predators are fit to a single environment and in kind of built-in harmony. They eat a little bit too many of the prey and then the prey are fast enough and their population goes down. We were able to become the apex predator in every environment and over hunt every single environment, right? And then continue to do that thing.
Well, I mean, I think ultimately what we're leading back to is the necessity for the necessity for this other way of knowing, this other way of and a check and balance that we have to have in place, that seems to be something beyond technology.
The love and wisdom, or the virtue and wisdom of God's
Right.
commensurate with the power. Okay, so basically, the moment we started getting the abstraction capacities that gave us tools, language, et cetera, we were differentiated from the rest of animals in a fundamental way. And there was an exponential curve of our differentiation that started, but it was long and slow for a long time, like exponential curves are. And it started to uptick kind of with the Industrial Revolution. And then it started to verticalize with the digital revolution and the exponential tech that digital makes possible. So what that means is the speed and the consequentiality of the types of issues we've had for forever, the problems of both warfare, meaning cause direct harm with our power, and externality, indirect harm caused by our capabilities, is now on the verticalizing part of the exponential curve. And so, can we run exponential externalities in a finite biosphere? No. Can you do exponential warfare? Can you do exponential control of what different populations think, meaning exponential disinformation, and still have enough coherence or consistency for anything like a viable civilization? No. So we are at this unique point where the total magnitude of power makes the way that we've been behaving, that's been problematic for a long time, inexorably, catastrophically problematic. But those same types of capacities, that same abstraction and technology, makes possible, if we repurpose how we're using it, something like a new type of viable global civilization that has never been possible before. Mm-hmm. The ability to process. I mean, obviously, we're having a conversation mediated by computers and satellites and the internet that then lots of other people are watching, that allows for something that couldn't have happened previously, right? If we want to make decisions regarding the biosphere and the technosphere and very complex things, you have to be able to coordinate the sense-making intelligence of lots of people. That same tech that being used for narrow rivalrous purposes, driving externalities, destroys stuff. If we took those externalities and kept internalizing them and saying, let's take all the things that matter and apply the tech towards that progressively better, make a very different set of possibilities.